Please join me in welcoming Andrew Garfield.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here in this middle school with you all today. It's lovely.
Yes, so there will be an exam afterward.
I was counting on it.
Who are you wearing, by the way? This is quite a suit.
Who am I wearing? Yeah, it's a little much, isn't it?
No, it's perfect. It's just the right amount.
I forget. We can look at the label later.
So I want to get into your new film, We Live in Time, but we have an hour. So I figured why not go back in the time that we live in to talk about the beginning of your career, or even actually the moments before a professional career started. I'm curious, when did you first feel like an actor? Or did you know that was something that you wanted to be?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I don't know if I still feel like an actor. I think I was lucky that I got very, very lost as a teenager, and I didn't accept the options that were presented to me, which were you be a doctor, be a lawyer, or be in business, or fail and be a drug addict on the street. That was the kind of what was presented to me by a very scared and protective Jewish father. That was my father, Richard Garfield, and I kind of thought, well, I guess I'm going to be a drug addict on the street because that seems like the best out of the four options for me personally. And my brother was already the doctor of the family, and so it was only right that I would just be the failure. No, but it was a little bit like kind of the feeling of Jim Carrey's character in The Truman Show, where you have a sense that there might be something beyond those kind of four walls that have sky painted on it. There might be a door in there somewhere to another world or an expanded world. And I think I was lucky that I let myself be as lost and be in as much lost space as possible so that I had the need to find that door. And I kept on pushing on the wrong doors for a while. I tried painting, sculpting, music. I tried lots of different other creative things that my mother encouraged me into. And then the last thing I think that was available was a drama class outside of school. And it felt really great. And then a mentor arrived at the right moment in school for me. And he saw me doing a school play just for fun. And he said, I think you might be able to study this and make a career out of it potentially. And that was when I was 16. And it was like I just kind of latched on and like white knuckled it until for the last 24 years until this conversation now, and I continue to kind of grip to it.
It was all leading to this. Yeah,
yeah, it's all been leading to this discussion.
Yeah. But you did go to drama school after what we would call high school in the U.S., right? You were in that kind of program. Yeah. Do you feel like once you left drama school and you have to kind of hit the pavement, did you feel set up to be in this sort of the scramble of auditions and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I worked really hard, I think because of the fear that my father drilled into me about, being homeless. And I'm thankful for him for that, because it meant I probably pushed a lot harder than I needed to. But I made sure that I proved him wrong in a way, and it was the right pressure I needed in order to live the life I was supposed to live, I suppose. I don't think I felt prepared. I felt prepared to take any job that was on offer. That's for sure. And one of the first jobs I had was a Doritos commercial in Spain, and I was like, I've made it. I'm being paid, 2,000 euros for 2 days of work, pretending to play guitar with the Dorito as a plectrum. That's where do you go from there?
That was your first Oscar nomination.
That was
right?
That was the top of the mountain for me. And then I was lucky enough to be doing theater, and of course I had 1.5 to 2 years of waiting tables in the midst of all this as a rites of passage. That's a small amount of time for an actor to be out of work as an actor, 1.5 years to 2 years. So I'm so grateful for that time as well, because it's just that period of time kind of asks you the question, how serious are you about this dream? How serious are you about this art? And I think what I discovered at drama school was great playwrights. I discovered Arthur Miller and Shakespeare and Tennessee Williams and all these different genres of like Greek theater, and I thought, oh, this has all been waiting for me. This was the door. This was the door towards meaning. This was the door towards an ability to connect with the world in a way that I knew was there, but I couldn't. I didn't. It was blurry until I read All My Sons by Arthur Miller, and I was like, oh, how is this my story with my father? How is this story that was written, post World War II? How is this my and my dad's story? Oh, this is the power of storytelling that I've always kind of subliminally understood, but now I'm starting to be able to consciously engage with it and feel connected to it myself and feel connected to the world with it and hopefully provide some service through storytelling. I started to understand it as an act, as a kind of a service industry, which I really like framing it as. Otherwise, you can crawl up your own backside, forgive the figure of speech.
We are in a middle school, so be careful. Yeah.
A little bit of puerile kind of, is appropriate.
I think I was a theater student as well, and I just remember accessing that canon of work and being like, wow, there's so much tradition here, and there's so much that has come before, but I can still somehow access it because revivals are possible. And it's a really exciting kind of realization. But you also, earlier in your career, accessed a different kind of canon, which is you did 2 episodes of Doctor Who.
Yes, I did.
So what was that? How did that come about? And that, I feel like for a British guy, like that's a big deal, right? Like that's a really big deal.
What's the right answer here? I to be honest, I wasn't a Doctor Who fan, and this is, but I can sense that maybe this might be insulting to.
Oh, not at all.
Okay,
no. My boyfriend would be mad, but he's not here.
He's not here. But yeah, we won't share this part of the interview with him. It's an institution. It's a British institution, but again, it was like, are you going to pay me to act? And are you going to pay me to act with David Tennant and a bunch of other great actors? Then I'm in. Like, I will literally do anything. But yeah, it was a wonderful thing to be part of the British tradition of that show. Yeah.
So I had the chance recently to rewatch John Crowley's film Boy A. John Crowley also directed We Live in Time, so there's a nice symmetry there at the beginning of your career to where you are now.
To the end of my career.
Yeah, this is it. This is it.
This is the final thing.
This is the last audience you'll ever. Yeah.
That's right.
No, I mean Boy A. If anyone hasn't seen it, please do watch it. It's on Peacock. It's remarkable, and I was watching it, and I thought, anyone watching this who's in the industry would see your performance and be like, who the fuck is that kid? We need to get him, to be Spider-Man, I guess. But like, what did that feel like when it happened? I mean, when you got cast, and did you know that it was going to be something special in the process of it?
No, again, I think, thank you, it's very kind words. And I agree, I think it's a very sweet film, very beautiful film, and a film about a very, very interesting subject matter with a very empathic eye upon a subject matter that usually doesn't get that kind of empathy. So it felt very powerful to me. When I read the script, I was like, oh, these are the kind of films I want to make. And some of my favorite filmmakers are people like Ken Loach and Mike Leigh, who we were just talking about, and particularly Ken Loach, who's someone who's a filmmaker for the working class and a filmmaker for the oppressed, a filmmaker for the people on the fringes of our society. So I think I was always drawn as an audience member to stories about people who were outcast, exiled, mistreated in some way. And the first play I ever did was a play called Kess, which was based on a Ken Loach film. I don't know what came first, the play or the film, but I played the lead in that character called Billy Casper, who adopts this wounded kestrel in a northern mining town in I forget the era, was it the 70s, 60s and 70s. And he creates a relationship with this bird. And it's a beautiful film, you should see it. And this felt very akin to a film like that. But the first film I ever made was a film that actually had a clip in there with Robert Redford called Lions for Lambs. So that was my first movie, and it completely ruined me in the sense that it was Robert Redford, Meryl Streep, Tom Cruise, Andrew Garfield, whoever the fuck that is, and then like Michael Pena, and I was like, oh no, like really, where do I go from here? In the sense of, you know, you taste the best sushi in the world, and you go, I can never go to one of those conveyor belt sushi places ever again. And then I read this script, and it was John, and I'd loved John's theater work. He's an amazing theater director as well as a fantastic film director. And I saw a production that he did of a Martin McDonagh play called The Pillow Man at the National Theatre when I was in drama school. And it was one of those seminal, I think when young actors are at drama school, there are certain things that they take with them for the rest of their lives. And for me, it was Eddie Murphy's Delirious. I don't know why. Me and my housemates would watch that over and over and over again. Mike Nichols' Angels in America for HBO. We would watch that over and over and over again. And then there were certain plays. Mark Rylance was running the Globe at the time, and he was doing all of the great Shakespeare plays, so his work. And then John's production of The Pillow Man at the National was one of those productions that you go, oh, I want to do that. And it kind of blew my mind. So then, of course, this script and him and my first lead in a film, and I was absolutely petrified and riddled with insecurities and imposter syndrome. Really up through, because I had no idea it was going to be seen anywhere apart from on Channel 4, and we went to Toronto with it, and we ended up getting a couple of BAFTAs for it. And I think even through all of that, I was waiting to wake up, or I was waiting for someone to say, only joking, you're not good at acting. Like, you know, I think there is still remnants of that I carry with me on stage with you right now, and I think maybe it's healthy. Mike Nichols, because I did a play with Mike Nichols, Death of a Salesman, and very early on in the rehearsal process, we were talking, he turned to me and says, I'm really not worried about you at all. And I'm like, why is that? He's like, well, because you're just like me. You really don't think much of yourself, do you? And it was this weird, beautiful blessing of a wound that was like, oh, this is going to keep you chasing something or working harder, or I don't know. It felt like a beautiful kind of like, I don't know, a kinship through our anxieties or something. It was lovely.
Yeah, I'm so curious about that kind of, I mean, I don't want to call it self-doubt exactly. It's maybe a healthy sense of like, I still can do more, you know, that leads you from Boy A, which, you know, is about a kid getting out of prison essentially after committing a crime as a child. It's really moving. Again, you should watch it. It's on Peacock. And then, you know, just a couple years later, you're all of a sudden helping to tell the Facebook story with David Fincher, with an Aaron Sorkin script. Where did doubt enter that picture? Or, I mean, because that, I mean, from my perspective, it really seemed to change your career. It brought you into the American consciousness, which is, of course, the only one that matters.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Thank you, yes.
So how did you process the whole experience of The Social Network, I guess, is the big question I'm asking.
Yeah, no, and yes, I appreciate you naming the thing that needs to be named, is that America is the only place that counts in the entire universe. Whether or not there's life on other planets really doesn't matter. Yes, so, I'm so grateful for that experience and to be a part of such a seminal film that we didn't have any idea was going to be seminal. In fact, Jesse Eisenberg and myself were huddled in the corner of the premiere after party that I believe was happening in New York, kind of talking to each other and going, it's bad, right? It's bad, and we're bad. And we were both like, yeah, we're bad. It's bad. Everyone's blowing smoke and they're full of shit, and like, yeah, they're just kind of like preparing us for the fallout of this. We screwed it up. And I think, yeah, it's just pure protective mechanism. Ultimately, it's a way of, you know, beating ourselves up before we get beaten up by anyone else. And on the flip side of it, there's something, as you say, quite beautiful about it, which I think Martha Graham called divine dissatisfaction in a letter that she wrote to Agnes de Mille. And I relate. I think it's the thing that keeps artists forever dissatisfied, and it's this mysterious thing that pulls us towards this work. And it means that, you know, Mike Nichols, you know, passes away, and he's mid preparation for his next movie. You know, his work was unfinished, and in a way that feels poetic, because he was still longing to express something, or to search for something, or to, you know, leave more of himself here. And those are the people that I find most inspiring, not the people who hoard before they die, but the people who just give themselves away, give all of their wisdom away, give all of their knowledge, all of their vulnerabilities, and all of their work, like scattering themselves like seed, because they know they can't take any of it with them. So that's what I hope to kind of replicate in a way. But with the social network, it was a very, very beautiful experience, because David is so unbelievably competent and confident and ingenious. And a lot of people dislike the amount of takes that he does. And I absolutely adored it, because there's nothing worse as an actor than going home at the end of the day and thinking of all the different ways you could have done a scene. Much, much better to go home at the end of the day and going, I never want to do that scene ever again, because I did it in literally 100 different ways. And there was one incredibly hilarious moment where I was walking around behind the set, and to like just behind Video Village, where David is with his digital video guy, and we were in the middle of quite an important, intense, dramatic scene, and they were on my close-up, and I think we were on take 16 or 17, and I overheard David saying to his videographer, okay, first print, cut takes 1 through 15, like delete takes 1 through 15, so first print is 16. I collapsed. I was like, there must have been something in the first 15. There must have been a moment that was like, but no, it was it was wonderful. It was so inspiring, and it was so rigorous, and I don't know, it kind of doesn't allow self-doubt to creep in when you work at that kind of rate.
I mean, people just saw a clip from Social Network of, you know, your big scene, you know, I'm coming back for everything. Do you remember what take that was? I mean...
It was definitely... He was very kind that day to me. He was. I think we started with my coverage because he knew that was, you know, going to be exhausting for me, and he didn't want me too exhausted. He wanted me just the right level of exhausted. So I believe, I can't remember exactly, but it was on the lower end of his scale. I believe we were in the 20, 30 range of takes, and that still says that's a lot. But he was very, very sweet, and I think on the last take I was kind of collapsed on the floor waiting to hear if we were going again. And, you know, in the middle of these, you know, with Justin Timberlake and Jesse and amazing actors, and then a bunch of lovely, amazing supporting extras, artists who were young and, I don't know, felt very excited to be on a David Fincher, Aaron Sorkin set and on a big dramatic day. And I was sat and I was just like trying to kind of dredge up any more energy and keep my voice, because, you know, you have to scream and shout. And David kind of, I feel him approaching me while I'm like staring at the floor. And I just see his hand come into my line of sight, puts his hand out, and I look up as if it was like God or something. And I take his hand, he pulls me up, and he looks me in the eye, and he shakes my hand, and he says, okay, moving on. And it was very, very sweet. And like all of the other actors gave me a nice little round of applause, mostly because I survived, I think, not because I had done anything special. It was just mostly like, oh my God, I'm glad it wasn't me kind of thing. And it was a very, very, it was a beautiful, and I could, you know, he doesn't have to say anything. He can just telepathically let you know how you're doing.
So you and Jesse Eisenberg are fretting at this party about like, oh, I think we screwed it up or whatever. That was not the case. People really embraced the movie. It went on to great acclaim and success. Did you allow yourself to feel, or did you feel that this was a kind of course-altering moment in your career, the Social Network?
I think it led to Sony becoming aware of my work, and Sony was the studio behind the Spider-Man films, and at the time, and so I do, yes. That's my simplest answer. I think it, yeah, and Mike, someone like Mike, who is the kind of, that lineage is where I feel most at home, where I'm working with someone who's a tremendous theater artist and a tremendous film artist. Like, that's where I feel most at home. And the fact that, he had seen my work in that and thought that I would make a good Biff Loman opposite Philip Seymour Hoffman, it felt like, it felt like that. In that mysterious way, you kind of get opened up to a whole new world, including the world of, tentpole movie franchises, and which I'm just as grateful for.
When you were doing Death of a Salesman, and forgive me, I know that was in New York, but was it also London, or was it no, just New York? That was after Social Network, correct? Yeah. Was there any doubt of I just had this huge hit movie, should I really be taking time to do a play, or is that not?
Well, it was actually after. So I did the Social Network, and then I made the first Spider-Man.
Oh, you had already shot Spider-Man.
So I just shot Spider-Man, and then Mike had said, "This is the window, if you'd like to come and do it," and it was a no-brainer. It was actually, I think, because of having had the experience in the big superhero franchise world, that I needed to get back to my roots, I suppose, or kind of my soul's work in a way. Not that Spider-Man wasn't my soul's work, it definitely was. I really felt like big passionate part of me that needs that character and needs to be, connected to that character. But I think all the stuff around it obviously is just a different kind of circus and a different kind of experience. And I think I needed to strip all that back and make sure I stayed grounded in the theater. Particularly, I had never done a Miller play, and Miller is my favorite playwright. And Mike, one of my all-time heroes, Philip Seymour Hoffman, maybe in my top 3 favorite actors of all time. And it was, as they say, a no-brainer.
Well, I do want to ask about Spider-Man. I mean, because this is a question that, yes, a rarefied few, but enough actors now have faced. Is okay, I've built this career, and now I have this opportunity to go play this iconic thing in franchise world. I can understand the appeal of it. It's good money. It's Spider-Man. That's pretty cool. Did you have trepidation about it in any way? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't good money, but
oh, okay.
At first,
I stand corrected.
But the assumption, I understand the assumption. I was just lucky to be there, especially on the first film. The trepidation was all the stuff that's obvious. I want to be able to walk around and, people watch still and not be watched. I want to be able to talk to someone at a cafe or a bar or my cab driver and not have it be about, me or the idea of a famous person. I was, I'm very, very in love with being alive. I'm very, very in love with being part of the world. And I was very, very scared of all of that being threatened, in the sense of, listen, I love being able to get a table at a restaurant. That is a perk. And being able to go and see theater, and be able to text the night before and being able to get a seat in a great theater, listen, I will exploit those 2 things wherever I can. But that's kind of the limit of it. The rest kind of sucks, because you get treated in a way that is unrelated to who you actually are. I mean, and there's a great difference I find when doing theater and when doing film, is that most of the time when I make a play and I see people on the street of New York or on the street of London or at stage door, they want to talk about the play. They don't want to talk about me. They want to talk about the play. And then when I see someone in the street who's seen Spider-Man only, that I actually am not part of that interaction. I don't actually exist. It's an idea. It's a projection. It's an image. And so it's like I'm providing a service of Mickey Mouse. I'm like Mickey Mouse for a second, and I can do that. And then, but if I'm doing that too much, I can start to lose my mind. And because one of my big longings, and I think one of the reasons why I love what I do, is that it's all about being as human as humanly possible, and as empathic as humanly possible, and as in ownership of the depths and the darkness and the difficulty, as well as all of the golden things about what it is to be a human being. So for me, that I was very, very trepidatious about that aspect, and it's proven out. And at the same time, I work very, very hard to make sure I can have a chat with my cabbie, and I make sure I can talk to strangers on a food tour in San Sebastian and be like, so where in Ireland are you from, and what's that like? And so it's not, so this Mickey Mouse thing doesn't distract from actually connecting. I long, like everyone else. We all just want to be connected. I think that's one of the powerful things about storytelling, is it actually does connect us in a deeper way, and that's why it's so much more satisfying when you come out of a play and they're like, oh my God, this is what the play meant for me, and I actually lost my dad to whatever it is. Like it's soulful and it's soothing and it's, oh yeah, that's why we're alive.
Yeah, and I think that the work that you've done post the two Spider-Man films, I mean, really speaks to your discursive interest. That you've done a lot of genres. One film that maybe I think was a little underlooked is Ramin Bahrani's 99 Homes, a really kind of old-fashioned, drama about moral inequity or moral clarity, I guess. Do you have any particular sort of takeaway from that film, or this is a much smaller scale thing than Spider-Man? Did that feel? I mean, it almost feels like theater.
Yeah. So again, I made the first Spider-Man film, went and did Death of a Salesman. Ramin Bahrani, who directed 99 Homes, saw Death of a Salesman, and then I went back and I did the second Spider-Man film, and then I went and made 99 Homes with Ramin, and I think there was a kind of balance, an antidote that I needed both times. I needed to feel grounded again in that deep connection piece that we're talking about. And with 99 Homes, I felt very excited because, again, it felt like he was coming from the Ken Loach school of filmmaking, using a lot of non-actors, using a lot of, having it feel verite style and found and lived and not acted. And I loved that as a style. And thematically, yes, it felt very, very akin to something like The Bicycle Thieves or The Grapes of Wrath, or, a very current, prescient commentary on late-stage capitalism, this kind of Darwinistic approach to humanity, which feels so outdated and so kind of mechanistic in a way, treating people like cogs in a wheel of industry, and if you're not useful to this post-industrialized world, then you will be abandoned and you will be discarded and you will actually be destroyed. It felt like akin to Death of a Salesman. It felt like a Miller play in a way. So yeah, I felt very, very passionate about it, and making it was challenging, but I got to work with the great Laura Dern as well, and make a lifelong friend in her. And I feel like the themes of that film still remain very current and very important and close to my heart.
Yeah, it's again another film worth seeking out if you haven't seen it. 99 Homes. It's really great. After that, I mean, I don't know what the timeline of exactly when you filmed things, but in terms of release, you had a really big 2016, which saw the release of Hacksaw Ridge, a big war epic, and Silence, a Scorsese film that is an epic in its own right, but true to its title, quieter, more pensive. I want to start with Hacksaw Ridge. I mean, you were done with Spider-Man, you'd done theater, you'd done independent film after Spider-Man. Here you are now back on a big set, lots of things blowing up around you. What drew you back to that kind of scale of filmmaking?
It's so funny because it didn't feel like that scale. It felt like an independent war film somehow. The budget was pretty low for a film of that scope, and Mel Gibson's someone who can make a film look more expensive than it is. And he was frustrated and hamstrung by the budget all along, but he made it work. It felt. I read the screenplay written by the great Randall Wallace, who co-wrote Braveheart, and it was just it felt again like this old school kind of big emotional epic. It felt like it had a big emotional heart, an emotional core that was making all of the context or the kind of the big war set pieces heartfelt and worthwhile. It didn't feel just like this gore fest. It felt like it was about something very, very pure, about the human spirit and about compassion and empathy. This man in the middle, this pacifist in the middle of World War II, who was not only rescuing his own American troops, he was also rescuing people on the Japanese side and treating them. He would find a person and he would treat them as if their lives mattered as much as his own. He was this transcendent being that did superhuman things on the battlefield. He if you haven't seen the film, he drags and lowers down 74 of his fellow soldiers off of this 80-foot ridge in the middle of Okinawa. And I got into great shape for the film, and I got very strong, and I was like, I'm going to do it all for real, and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Literally on the first body I was trying to drag, I was like, put him on a harness, put him on a wire, and because I can't do this. But I was in good shape, and the guy was smaller than me, and I was like, it made me realize that the character I was playing, it was physically impossible what he did. And there was some strange magic that was filling him up. There was some strange spirit that was filling, some muse that, he would call God. He would call his higher power. But it's like those stories you hear about, a mother lifting a car off of their, crushed child. It's like those moments that occur that you can't explain, that are unfathomable, that come out of absolute necessity. And he just happened to do it over the course of one night and rescued a bunch of his fellow human beings' lives. And it was that really kind of struck me. And I had not done a war film, and I love, Saving Private Ryan and Platoon, and and this one felt like it had a message of a very deeply humanistic message. And that my favorite part of the film is seeing him treating soldiers on the other side just as well as he treats his fellow Americans.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that Hacksaw Ridge and Silence came out in the same year, because they are both about the convictions of faith, and in the case of Hacksaw Ridge, used to great, he saved a lot of people. In Silence, I don't know, when I saw that film, I was left a little bit more dubious about whether we were supposed to appreciate what these, it's about missionaries in kind of feudal Japan, Catholic missionaries. Why are they choosing that? I mean, did making those two films back to back, I guess, lead to any, I don't know, epiphanies about your own sort of approach to faith, to religion?
Yeah, I think as you say really well, the Hacksaw Ridge is kind of a story of, the light side of faith, and like the light in the darkness that faith can bring. But Silence feels like a massive, that the character has a massive misinterpretation of faith, or has to learn about the true mystery of faith rather than his own egoistic interpretation, or his putting his own he believes. I think he starts to understand that he believed he was God. He was searching for his own glory, not the glory of God's. And I think that there's something deeply unsettling about the film, and horrific, like the Japanese powers in the film are attempting to teach this guy through suffering and through the destruction of his own humanity and others, that he may have missed the mark, and they have every right to, because you look at the history of colonialism, we send in our priests and then we send in our militias. So the Japanese had very, very good reason to be petrified of these Jesuit priests coming, without any weapons, but knowing that straight behind, they imagined, the weapons would follow. But for Rodriguez, I think what he discovers is a truly spiritual path is a path of letting the small self be obliterated, be destroyed. It's so hard to talk about because it is so profound and so mysterious. And I think Shusaku Endo's book of Silence does it beautifully well. And I think that Marty's film does it beautifully well as well as a meditation. I don't think it's meant to be solved, but I think that sometimes, and I can feel this personally, is that what I think is the most spiritually righteous thing to do is oftentimes the most damaging thing to do in a particular instance. And I think we see it all over the place. We see it in our politics right now. It's a bunch of people who truly believe they're doing what's right and righteous and on a spiritually high vibration is deeply destructive, and it's an incredible important thing, I think, for us to identify how we get to those places, because usually it is this strange it's the ego, it's the small self that takes over, the kind of stuck self. And the journey that Rodriguez goes on is that he has to forego his own glory, forego his own kind of calcified ideas, what it is to be a good man, a good God-fearing Jesuit devotional priest. He has to obliterate the whole thing in order to actually find God. And it's a profound journey.
It is indeed, and a film that really stayed with me for a long time after I saw it. On the matter of faith, something that I have personal, deep faith in is the musical Rent. I slept on the streets of Boston to get rush tickets as a teenager. I've seen it 9 times. And so when it was announced that you would be playing Jonathan Larson in an adaptation of Tick, Tick, Boom, his earlier musical, pre-Rent, I was excited that you were doing it, but I also was like, oh, I don't know, are they going to get this right, when that project came to you, I'm curious what your reservations were. I mean, look, you were singing, and I don't think you'd sung before in anything we'd seen. So can you tell me a little bit about why you signed on to this big? I mean, it's not big. It's actually kind of an intimate musical, but it's it carries a lot of weight with it.
Yeah. I completely understand your your hesitation of being fully gung-ho about my participation. I respect it.
It wasn't your participation, it was just the existence of the thing at all, yeah.
Gatekeeping. I think this is what they call gatekeeping. And I get it. I gatekeep so many things. And honestly, so Lin-Manuel Miranda is the filmmaker of Tick, Tick, Boom, and he attributes a lot of his own career, his own drive to make musical theatre to Jonathan Lawson. So he was coming to it obviously from such a deeply personal place. And he had seen me doing Angels in America, and I was at the peak of my Hamilton obsession, I think, like unhealthy obsession, like listening to the whole album on loop, like literally, like uncomfortable. To the point where when he said he wanted to talk to me about something, I almost said no because I was afeared of what I would do and how I would behave. And I thought, I don't want to ostracize someone who's a hero of mine, so I better just avoid them entirely and say I'm busy. I was in that mindset. And but eventually we did get together, and he kind of slid across the score for Tick, Tick, Boom, and he said, if this doesn't make sense now, I promise you it will. And he said, I saw you doing Angels in America, and you didn't miss a show, and vocally that's an impossible thing to do. So if you're not tone deaf, then I think I would like to explore this with you. And I kind of lied, and I said, no, I can sing. And I went very quickly to a singing teacher, and he kind of connected me with an amazing woman called Liz Kaplan, who's just one of our great teachers generally, but particularly in musical theatre, teaches and keeps all the great voices alive. And so I went for a test audition with her, basically. It was kind of an unofficial, like, back channel that her and Lin were on text. And I knew that was happening. And we had a year to prepare. So I think after that first session, she texted Lin and said, yeah, I think we can get there. And I was so excited because I'd always wanted to learn how to sing. And in drama school, I think I sang from my singing track, I sang Tracy Chapman's Fast Car. And it was one of those things that my friends will continue to bring up as one of the most embarrassing things that happened at drama school. Because it sounded something like, you got a fast car, I got a ticket to anywhere. It was just like, it was the wrong choice, and it was kind of out of my range, and also I was in my major insecurity, don't look at me phase. And it was a train wreck. It was an absolute train wreck. So it's hilarious to them that I then went on to make a musical with Lin-Manuel Miranda and get nominated for an Oscar for singing, which is still absurd. Hence Liz Kaplan's genius, and hence Lin-Manuel Miranda's vision and instinct as a creative person to trust that someone who wasn't a musical theater actor had the ability to get there. And I think he knew that I was a passionate storyteller, and I think he knew that I could fill John, that character, with a certain degree of passion that, yeah, and he was right. And I fell in love with John. I fell in love with his story. I fell in love with what he was about, all of his music. And yeah, it was honestly, I think it remains one of the best creative life experiences I've had.
We will be posting the video of Andrew singing Fast Car to the Hamptons Film Festival website after this. Yeah, it's a really exuberant film. It's a sorrowful film. I mean, we know what happened to Lawson shortly after the events of the film, but for me, as a writer and just a person who has sort of chosen a creative life for himself, it felt like a really stirring testament to endurance and to seeing things arrayed before you that are pretty much, almost insurmountable obstacles and keeping going. You've been in this business now for almost 20 years, and there have been a lot of changes in those almost 20 years. I'm curious, like, how does your view of the industry adapt, like change with the times? I mean, are you feeling optimistic about the future of film, for example?
Gosh, oh boy, Jesus, this is a question above my pay grade. I can go both ways. I can feel very pessimistic, and I can feel very optimistic at the swing of a pendulum, to be honest. I see a film like Anora, and I'm like, oh, great. It's like as great as an independent film can ever be. And I see that Mike Lee is still making films, but I know that I don't know how many more he's got left to make. And I look, and then I look to my left and to my right, and I see, I see incredible creators, like someone like Bo Burnham, who I know is, just incredibly gifted, or someone like Ari Aster, and I'm looking to the younger gen, like the Safdie brothers, or I'm looking to the younger gen, like I feel like there will always be great creative people in our industry. I really, really do. And I think that maybe the most hopeful example can be, for me right now, is Brady Corbet, who made The Brutalist, which is making big waves in festivals right now, and A24 just picked it up. And I met Brady when he was 16. It's a Jonathan Lawson story, really, the Brady story. And your story and it's all kind of cut from the same cloth. I met Brady when he was 16, and I was 22, and we were on a Teen Vogue shoot in LA, and
We'll also be posting that to the Hamptons.
And he was the most precocious teenager I've ever met, and he was talking about Michael Haneke movies and Fellini, and he was this little 16-year-old cinephile from New York who felt like he had a European accent, and I didn't understand what was going on. And he was talking as if he was going to make the next great American masterpiece before he was 40, just like Jonathan Larson. And I kind of went like, okay, kid. But then to see his career as it's unfolded, and to see his lack of compromise. He's an artist that has been struggling and clawing and not compromising, working with Hanako, like following his specific calling, his specific path, his specific golden thread, and then to see the response to The Brutalist in Venice and to see people calling it a great American masterpiece of cinema, it was like the most hopeful, moving, touching moment, because having known Brady for that long and known how much of a struggle it's been and how uncompromising he is, but finally having the world catch up to what he knew within himself is very, very beautiful and hopeful to me. So I'm holding on to things like that. And then you see, we were just talking backstage about Oh Mary, Cole Escola's play, and you see a piece of theater that is so singular and so wild and so uniquely creative from this one particular person's soul, and then it becomes all of our stories because of that particularity, because of that specificity and vulnerability and taste. And you kind of go, okay, yeah, we're going to be okay as long as Michaela Cole keeps making things, or as long as Bo Burnham, or as long as Spike Jonze. You know, it's very reassuring when those things come through amidst the noise, because I think where I get less hopeful is the din of technology that is making a din of that horrible word content for us to be numbed out by, and because I think we are being more and more encouraged towards numbness in our culture and disassociation, disaffection. And so then when you have a great piece of art that does wake up the heart, and I hope that We Live in Time does that for people, it kind of can crack open our calcified hearts. And I think our hearts have been calcified by design, by the culture right now. So I'm longing for that calcification to break so that vitality can come back into the culture. And I think there are certain people who are really bringing that vitality right now. So that, and I think in a dark time, it's those little pierces of light that are the only things that do give us hope. So yeah.
Well, it's why film festivals like this are great, because you get to see that stuff and you know, the future of things. I am 2 months older than you. Oh. We both had a significant birthday last year. Uh-huh. We turned 40. How has getting older affected like your idea of what you want to do next? I mean, are there different sorts of roles you want to play now that you're in a different phase of life? You've done a lot of different genres: musical, superhero, war film. Is there anything kind of still on your bucket list, I guess?
God, yeah. Thank you for bringing up our age.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. As I was saying it, I was like, why mention that? But
are you selling us out? It is interesting, isn't it, being in our 40s? Oh gosh. No, I'm more confused than ever, to be honest. I think I thought I knew what 20s and 30s are somehow simpler, because it's survival and planting flags and going, this is who I am and this is what I'm about, and I want to be accepted and I want to belong. And then you experience a certain amount of that and you realize, oh my gosh, I've been so narrow-minded, I've been so narrow-focused. So I feel like I'm grateful, that's a consciousness expansion is happening. And and then one realizes how small one is in the world, how infinitesimally unimportant one is in the grand scheme of history. And it's liberating and terrifying, a little bit like the Father Rodriguez in Silence thing. It's like, this is a guy that thought he was going to change the world and change the whole country of Japan and bring God's word to Japan. And then he realizes that his destiny, in fact, is to forsake God publicly and live a quiet, silent life in prayer and devotion to God without anyone knowing about it. That was his destiny. And that's the way he could serve the world in the most profound way and grow in the most profound way. So I think I'm in some version of that when you go, okay, so what? I think the question is very much now in more of the Mike Nichols way of how do I scatter myself like seed in the most useful way? how can I be as useful to storytelling, to audiences, but also now how can I be most useful to younger actors and younger filmmakers and younger writers, and keep the lineage that I feel like I'm a part of alive, so that it doesn't just turn into, and nothing against, 30-second TikToks. I'm a doom scroller, and I love it. Like anyone, I'm no better. But I do think that I would love to remain a part of a lineage that provides something deeper and more nourishing. And I think that we probably need to fight for that in our culture right now, because I think it may be at risk of being kind of overwhelmed and absorbed by the monster of, the fastness of the social media age. So, yeah, I just want to be used well, and I want to give myself to things that are worthy.
Well, to that end, and unfortunately this will be my last question, but we got to talk about We Live in Time, a beautiful film that reunites you with the director John Crowley. It's a romantic drama, you and Florence Pugh. It was really nice in a way that I hope doesn't sound weird, watching you play like a real grown-up. Like this is like, they're dealing with matters of childbirth and those sort of adult kind of decision-making things that, that we can all relate to when we get to a certain age. I'm curious what drew you to this piece, because it's maybe not something we've seen you do before.
Yeah, oh, thank you. And I feel the same way. And I think so. I had taken a year off, kind of unintentionally, but I had done Angels in America, and then Tick Tick Boom and the Spider-Man film and this miniseries Under the Banner of Heaven, and there was a certain level of praise those things got, and my mother also happened to have died in the midst of all of it, and I was in a very reflective, kind of grief-stricken place, and I needed to stop, and I needed to consider, not unlike the question that you asked previously about what now. I'm still asking that what now, and because life started to take on a completely different texture and color after my mother's death, and rightly so, in a very natural way, just kind of felt initiated into a deeper reality where, an awareness that we're all going towards the same ultimate destination. And we better remember that, because that's what actually gives life meaning. So I was asking all these questions and ruminating all these things. And then this script arrived that was dealing with the exact things that I was ruminating upon and considering. And it was literally like all the themes that were interesting to me: love, life, vitality, death, loss, courage, risk, terror, existential anguish. It was all there. Joy, birth, death, the whole thing. And I thought, oh gosh, it felt like I could have written this in this period. It felt like if I was a sculptor, this is what I would be trying to make clay form into in some way, to express this from, this is where my soul is in this moment. So it felt like I was able to go and make this film from that very, very pure emotional place that I was personally moving through. So nothing better than being given the opportunity to alchemize and transmutate your own insides into something external that has form. That's the great gift of being an artist, but it's very rare that you get to do it as an actor, because you're so dependent on other people wanting to do the same thing. I can't just go into the next room and make a pot. I can't just go into the next room and write a song. I have to have Florence Pugh, and I have to have John Crowley, and I have to have a crew, and I have to have like $11 million to do it, which is absurd, but the fact that it lined up timing-wise, and with John, who I love, and who I've been wanting to make a film with, because he's such a sensitive director, and he provides such beautiful space for actors. So yeah, it all lined up in the most beautiful kind of cosmic way.
Yes, well, and that is a good advertisement to go see the film. And it's also, I think, a real testament to the passion and the person that you bring to all of your work. So thank you for reflecting on some of that work with us today, and thank you all for being here. Andrew, thanks
Thank you,
again.
Richard.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Lovely to see you all.